Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden has officially taken over the Oval Office. So the question now is, what will the next 4 years hold? The new book, Joe Biden, The Life, the Run, and What Matters Now, provides fascinating insights on the new leader, where he may take America, and how his past made him the man he is now. Author Evan Osnos joins us. Welcome to the show, Evan.
Thanks for having me.
We're really excited to dig into this book, Evan. And along with his political career, it lays out Biden's deep personal sufferings. His first wife died in a car accident along with her 1-year-old daughter, and he later lost his son, Beau, to brain cancer. So, how do you think this heartbreak has shaped him as a leader?
Yeah, in some ways, just that's the origins of this project. I had a conversation at one point with one of his friends a few years ago who said to me at the end of a long interview, he said, honestly, if you ask me who the luckiest person I know is, it's Joe Biden. And if you ask me who the unluckiest person I know is, it's Joe Biden. And I think it's that combination of qualities that has shaped who he is as a person. I mean, to be perfectly blunt about it, a lot of members of the U.S. Senate, the kinds of people that make it to the presidency, have lived lives of more or less uninterrupted success. And that blinds them in many cases to the vulnerability of being an ordinary person and what that's like. And Biden, for all of his, good luck and making it along the way from one high office to another, has also suffered in very real ways that has given him an acquaintance with the fragility of life. And I think in some ways Americans sensed that during this campaign. And even if they don't agree with him on policy questions, they said that's, in the end, that's something that this country needs right now.
That deep empathy. So the other part of difficulty that you outline in the book is what we now know was a childhood stuttering problem that Joe Biden suffered with. And in the book, you say that he overcame this. He kind of spoke like Morse code, it sounded like, but that he overcame this with sheer will and perseverance. So speaking of challenges and difficulties, how did he actually overcome his stuttering?
Well, he really was incapacitated by it as a kid. I mean, even now, he can still tell you the names of kids who bullied him in school. It made a real imprint on him. I think as anybody who dealt with a kind of childhood moment like that can tell you, it really leaves a deep scar. And he learned these little tricks of the trade, ways of getting through the stutter. He would begin to ask somebody a question, for instance, before they could ask him a question. That would give him just a sort of half step forward. So he was in motion already. He started to memorize things like Irish poetry and the, Declaration of Independence. It's one of the reasons why he can rarely get through a paragraph these days without quoting some bit of Yeats or, his parents or the nuns he grew up with. It's really sort of baked into his mind. And look, I will also tell you that learning those little tricks of the trade was also to his disadvantage, ultimately. It's one of the reasons why he has a tendency sometimes, I think, to kind of go on longer than he should. He'll exhaust people's patience when he's talking because, in a sense, it's almost like this kind of he acquired the confidence as a public speaker as a teenager and was so, in some sense, he kind of reimagined who he was, and he carried that with him over the decades. But it really shaped who he was.
I think most of us know that Biden is the oldest president to assume office, but I found this interesting. In his very first Senate campaign, he was actually too young. So he ran at 29, meaning that on election day, he would have been constitutionally ineligible to take his Senate seat. Can you tell us more about that first campaign?
Yeah, it was really kind of an audacious thing to do, to even run at all. He was running against this absolute giant in local politics in the state of Delaware. Caleb Boggs, he had been the governor, he was the senator, he was a World War II veteran. And here was Biden. He really was nobody. And he and his wife and at that point, they had 3 little kids, and they went basically trooped around the state. It's a tiny state. They were more or less able to shake everybody's hand. And the key thing was that he ran on a message, and there's some irony to it today, but his message was Joe Biden, as he said in his television ads, knows what's happening now. He understands what's happening now. That was, the message of a rising generation. And there is in a sense, there's a parallel to where we are now in this country. We are, as any demographer, political scientist will tell you, that the generations in the United States today are more divided about ideas, about life experience than they ever have been. I mean, the average American today is a millennial, 38 years old, but the average senator is in their late 60s. There is this real sense that you have a rising generation that's trying to elbow its way into politics. And one of the challenges for Joe Biden, and you hear it when you listen to his language these days, is he wants to be able to meet people where they are. He's trying to understand it. You heard him in this town hall the other night say he spoke admiringly of young Americans. He said, quote, "They are not like us. They are open. They're inclusive." And I think there is a level of admiration that comes through. He recognizes that he's straddling this complicated moment in American life.
Yeah, and he is also straddling kind of like the last presidency that he was a part of when he was Barack Obama's vice president and now himself as sitting president. How do you think his time as the vice president is going to shape his own presidency?
He did get a very up-close view. I mean, he spent 8 years in the White House. It's very unusual, actually, to have somebody who was, in a sense, a happy vice president then go on to be a president. Very often, vice presidents are sort of miserable in the job. You know, they've often described it in colorful terms over the years. I think somebody at one point said it's a job not worth a bucket of warm spit. And he didn't actually use the word spit, but I'm cleaning it up for the purposes of our conversation today. Joe Biden had a very different view. He thought the vice presidency is a partner, really, with the president. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see that Kamala Harris is now really an important part of every moment, public moment that you see. They are always together. And that's true behind the scenes, too. I'm pretty reliably informed that she's in every meeting. Now, I think a lot of people are wondering, well, what's her job going to be? Is she going to have a specific portfolio? And I think the way to think of it is that her primary job at this point is really about helping him connect to this larger, more diverse country than he represents. He is, and I'm going to break news here, he's a white man in his 8th decade. And he sort of knows that. And I think he knows the limitations of that. He knows that he needs to be able to hear what other people's experiences are like. And he's sort of relying on that from Kamala Harris, but he comes to it with real respect for the vice presidency because of his own experience.
Evan, you're also a staff writer at The New Yorker, and as a journalist who's covered politics in Washington, I want to get your insight on something because I think about it. How do members of the press feel now that Trump has left the White House after the 4 years of being practically told they're the enemy of the people? What's that feeling like?
You know, I have to tell you, it is a kind of strange silence. I mean, there's just wonderful data that came out this week that showed that in the very beginning of the Trump presidency, there was literally 10 times the number of tweets and other social media posts about Trump than there were in the equivalent period about Biden. And I think I can speak for any human being these days. I can feel as if all of us could use a little more space in our heads for things other than the United States president. I mean, I say this as a biographer. I mean, I write about him because I think he is somebody who plays an essential role in trying to figure out this country's future. But he would be the first to tell you he should not be the primary subject of discussion at our dinner tables every night. That's not what we want out of politics. You know, in a way, what we want is politics to sort of run like the operating system in the background of your computer. It's doing the best when you're not talking about it all the time. And we're beginning to get into that mode, but it's going to take a while to shake off, I think, some of the habits of mind, the obsession and the fixation of the Trump era.
Evan, thank you so much for joining us today. And the book, Joe Biden, The Life, the Run, and What Matters Now, is available right now. And don't go anywhere because we'll be right back.